Well, that was his mainly distinctive thing, of course, is the old Bruford snare drum, which I think used to be the engineer's, studio engineer's nightmare. It was like, how do you do that? But of course, he always got it through, and especially with Eddie in the early days. But Bill's a very, he's not a greedy musician, When we're mixing, he was into his own dimension. But when I look back, sometimes the drums are actually quite quiet, and yet they still have effect. In other words, they were in a very good perspective because of the way he played, not necessarily because of the way it was mixed. It was in the period of making easy albums that were musically quite deep and thick, and it wasn't anywhere near as, it wasn't a headbanging record, where it took forever. And particularly when you mentioned Close to the Edge, I thought of the introduction, which is crazy riffs and stop gaps with voices in, and quite an insane piece. It really kicked off, I think, Close to the Edge spectacularly. And that was really capturing interaction between myself, Bill and Chris. And for me, that starts a track that does cover a lot of what Yes were about in that epic, Close to the Edge. And Bill also contributed on that album on the song And You and I, which most people probably wouldn't know. He wrote some themes in there. There was the Preacher song, and then the big themes, which were repeated, which I think really did help to, make Yes highly stylized. The fact that we had musical ideas coming from Bill, and as well as songwriting sort of ideas from John, and a mixture of that from Chris and myself. What comes to mind when we're talking about Bill influencing my playing is that there's something in Siberian Khatru that was a riff of Bill's that I think is in 5/4 that I always really liked. And when I used to play it, I always used to look at him. And then, of course, I also played it with Alan. But I always thought about Bill when I was playing, because it was one of those things, like his sort of tricks that he used to like to do. But another nice side of Bill is, of course, that he's a family man and he's got 2 lovely kids. And that's helped us get together at times when we've been apart for a long time. And Bill's, very, very sort of courteous. He often calls up and says, "Oh, you're just going off on tour," and so he likes to keep in touch. I think he's a very sensitive person. As soon as I met Bill, when I joined Yes, it was apparent that he did have a lot to offer. He was always getting involved in the construction of the song, over and above just, basically mainly the drum parts, but he would also come up with lots of ideas for us, and they would get worked in. So he was dabbling around on the keyboard quite often, coming up with ideas, as well as being very careful about not playing like other drummers and not falling into the usual patterns. Well, he had a lot of spontaneity. When we got on stage, very often he might say to me before, or say to us generally, "I'm going to play that bit different tonight," and we'd sort of scratch our heads and say, "Oh no, please!" But he would play something different, and that was a good trait he had. And I think he was he had humour. So at a show, there was always this ice-breaking Bill Bruford there, and because him and Rick would work off each other a lot. But I think mainly just his ability to thinking drummer. Doing a solo album, I might start working a song, and at that time, the 2 drummers I knew best were Alan and Bill. So like when I did Beginnings, they both played on it, and similarly, then the second album, they both played on it again. Sorry, they both did. So Bill's, I did the track All's a Chord, and that was quite an epic for me. It just sits in the front of side 1 of the last album I made, and it took me 4 years to make that track. So the progression from it was very much rooted around what was eventually Bill's drum track, So that it was a construction piece for me. And I chose Bill because he could offer a very individual approach to it. And even if I said play boom, 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 something like that, he would say, he'd sort of shake his head and look at me and, well, I'll play boom, boom, and he'd put his own nuance in it, which I think is really vital. He always wanted to sense progression. I think, I sympathise with that too, musically. And certainly at that time, Bill's main objective was this musical knowledge, the experience, the knowledge. And that's what took him away from Yes, unfortunately. Great show on you, man. I mean, you really deserve, an hour. I don't think half an hour is enough. You can't cover the life of Bill Bruford in half an hour. It's not fair.